I want to hear the truth. I want to hear the truth from Congressman Weiner. Quite frankly, I'd like an apology for him being complicit in a blame the messenger strategy. That was clear what happened. 72 hours in Palm Springs with your family is excruciating when you are being challenged. Andrew, why aren't you on vacation? Why won't you get off the phone? Because I'm being accused of being the hacker against a congressman. He said nothing. He allowed for that to go. His minions perpetuated that false, malicious meme, and then he went on CNN to attack me. I feel he was complicit. The media says Breitbart lies, Breitbart lies, Breitbart lies, Breitbart lies. Give me one example of a provable lie. One. One. Journalists, one. Put your reputation on the line here. One provable lie. Do you know what I would be accused of if I released this photo? I'm doing this to save his family, okay? And if this guy wants to start fighting with me again, I have this photo. But I absolutely do. I'm not doing this for nefarious purposes. I'd like an apology from him for allowing for his political protectors, which this was his strategy, was to blame me for hacking. Oh, don't worry, Breitbart's our regular whipping boy. We can accuse him of anything, and the press will not hold those journalists to account no matter what they say. And so I'm here for some vindication.
I came here to accept the full responsibility for what I've done. I am deeply regretting what I have done, and I am not resigning. I have made it clear that I accept responsibility for this, and people who draw conclusions about me are free to do so. I've worked for the people of my district for 13 years and in politics for 20 years, and I hope that they see fit to see this in the light that it is, which is a deeply regrettable mistake.
But let me tell you what the American people are interested in. They're interested in the idea that, like Damocles' sword, global warming is now hanging over the head of all of us. All of us, Republican or Democratic, even the Republican Party must be concerned about that. We have had thousands of scientists that have reached a consensus. In fact, I certainly will be glad to yield.
Well, I thank the congressman from New York for yielding, but don't you think a jet that is a 757 can seat 42 people, flying one person, is contributing to global warming?
Gentleman from New York controls the time. Gentleman from New York.
Reclaiming my time. You know, even those members of this panel, these scientists that took a look at global warming, global climate change, 90% of them, a record level of consensus, say that human causes are to blame. We are not going to leave it to the Republican Party to solve this problem. They're in the minority. They're probably in the permanent minority if they're going to spend their time obsessing about security arrangements for the Speaker and disagreeing with the President of the United States' spokesman. But we are. Nancy Pelosi, this party is going to do something about global warming. We're not going to wait for the Republican Party to join in. This just the same way we said we were going to increase the minimum wage, the same way we said we were going to increase safety by implementing 9/11 Commission reports, the same way we said we were going to reduce college costs for American middle class and those striving to make it. That's what we're going to do. You can have this debate all you want about the security arrangements for the Speaker, but we're going to go about doing the job of the American people. That's why the Democratic Party is in charge, not the Republican Party. And I yield back the balance of my time.
This is your opportunity, once and for all with my amendment, to vote to eliminate the Medicare Act. Once and for all, stamp out the scourge of public, government-run, government-administered, single-payer health care. This is your chance. And you know what? For all of the talk about how much you hate such programs, I think you'd welcome this opportunity. Now, I'm going to vote no, and I'll tell you why. Because I think the Medicare program works pretty darn well. I think it's administered efficiently. I think that you ask seniors, if you tell someone tomorrow who's 55 years old, you're going to get Medicare, that we're going to start covering people 55 to 65, and then maybe 45, and then 35, and who knows, maybe Medicare for everyone, you'd have a lot of people who would be pretty happy. There have been a lot of elements of this debate that have been hard to follow. I admit that. But one of the hardest has been the utter hypocrisy and contradiction inherent in the arguments of many of my friends on the other side. This is put up or shut up time. If you don't like national health care, if you don't like government-run health care, this is your amendment. I dare you. I double dare you. Vote yes on this. And then go home and explain to your constituents how you're so philosophically opposed to publicly funded health care that you voted to eliminate Medicare on its 44th anniversary.
There are two powerful forces we're taking on. One is the status quo, changing anything. There's a lot of institutional pressure to keep what we always have. But the second is the insurance lobby. These guys are tough. They don't mess around, and frankly, they've done a pretty good job somehow getting people standing up at town hall meetings, defending the poor, downtrodden insurance industry. It's a pretty remarkable thing they've done.
Anthony, you really don't believe you've seen the pictures. You don't believe these people are tools of the insurance industry, do you?
Well, I do have people standing up at town hall meetings and saying, you can't provide a strong public plan because then poor insurance companies won't be able to compete. That's a strange thing for a citizen to say. Most people don't like their insurance company.
I hear that, but I'm sure. I'm sure it could be happening out there. But again, you see,
well, why
all
are
of these
people?
people
Joe, let me ask you,
going
why are people against the public plan?
Because they've seen over the past 6 months government grow, they believe, at too rapid of a rate. And they're skeptical. I don't think there's been an explanation of how the government plan is not equal to the government takeover of health care, which we all know it's not a government takeover of health care, but that's how it sounds.
Right, but I have heard people say repeatedly, well, if the public option is too muscular, the insurance companies won't be able to compete. Well, if they can't compete, then they're not going to get customers. They're not going to get patients coming to them. Isn't that what we want, to give people that choice? And look, the problem that we have here is we're trying to jerry-rig this system so that insurance companies still continue to make healthy profits. Why? What is an insurance company? They don't do a single checkup. They don't do a single exam. They don't perform an operation. Medicare has a 4% overhead rate. Insurance companies take about $230 billion out of the system every year in profits and overhead. The real question is why we have a private plan. And now if the president's going to walk away from public...
Now you're sounding like you want the government to take over. You say, why do we have insurance companies in the healthcare business? Because we are a country that is, we believe in free enterprise,
hold on
if I'm not mistaken.
Well, tell that to people who get Medicare. They have a government-run plan, and they like it quite a bit, so much so that people come to town hall meetings and say, don't touch my Medicare.
We have 40%... But hold on a second. I know everybody on the left, and I'm not saying you're on the left, the middle, whatever, but Democrats love to say, well, if you're for Medicare, you can't be against a total takeover of health care. That's like saying, because we have Social Security, we can't have pension plans.
Wait, I understand. When you say total takeover, we're not taking over the doctors or the hospitals.
You just asked, though, Anthony, why in the world do we have insurance companies that make
what's
profits?
The value? What are they providing?
Well, what's the value of Wall Street companies making money?
Well, this is a different thing. This is not providing essentially a government service. Look, 40% of all Americans get their health care from a single-payer, government-funded, government-administered plan. Medicare, Medicaid, the Department of Defense, Department of Veterans Affairs, and Department of Indian Affairs. 40%. So they have a pretty good experience of a low overhead thing. Now, overhead, when I'm not here to advocate for the profits of insurance companies, I'm here to advocate for health care.
Well, it sounds like you think there is no need for us to have private insurance, health insurance.
I've asked you 3 times, what is their value? What are they bringing to the deal? What is insurance companies bringing to the deal here?
Again, I'm.
What are we getting for the 30% overhead?
I'm astounded by your question, because your question is suggesting that there is no need to have a country that's run on free market principles.
Let's focus on one thing at a time. Let's focus on one thing at a time.
You're talking about.
But this isn't a commodity, Joe. Healthcare's not a commodity.
You're saying healthcare is different than everything else.
Healthcare's not a commodity. So if I tell you tomorrow...
You are making... But see, you are making the conservatives' point. You are making the point at the town hall meetings that say, this is Barack Obama's opportunity to get rid of healthcare and turn it completely over to the federal government. And so I'm sitting here stunned listening to you saying, oh my God, you're making the point of the healthcare protesters.
In fairness, Barack Obama doesn't want to do what I want to do. There's going to be a vote on my plan. But I got to tell you something. We've got to answer the question that you have tripped over 3 times now.
No, I haven't tripped over it. My job is not to answer your questions. I am sitting here, though, dumbfounded that you are actually playing into the protesters' hands.
No, hold on a second. Barack Obama does not want to do the Weiner plan. I wish he was. We're going to have a chance to vote on mine. I might have more votes than his plan does. Okay. Because a lot of people believe that Medicare, if you said to a 50-year-old laid-off guy, 50, you're going to get Medicare.
Yeah.
He's going to be pretty darn happy. Because he can't get private insurance for anything affordable. Medicare doesn't have to go advertise. They don't have to put profits into administration.
Okay.
And Joe, I ask you a question. What are health insurance plans doing to produce health care? Just tell me. Health insurance companies.
Again, the question, I don't even understand the question other than it's you trying to make the point that we don't need private industry involved in healthcare at all. You were advocating with us today a complete takeover, a
Medicare for all
government takeover,
Medicare for all Americans.
Government.
Only if you think Medicare is a government takeover. Do you?
Carlos talks about Canada. You talk about Europe. Let's talk about the United States of America. Medicare.
You have to look at where there are public plans.
No. The United States of America, 40% of all tax dollars go through a public plan. Ask your parent or grandparent. Ask your neighbor whether they're satisfied with Medicare. Now, there's a funding problem, but the quality of care is terrific. You get complete choice. You can go anywhere you want.
How come you don't use it? You don't have it. How come you don't have it?
Because I'm not 65. I would love it.
Yeah, come on. You have a better health plan than everybody else.
First of all, that is 100% not true, and I have to stop you there. Federal employees, from the janitors to congressmen, have a government plan that is okay. It's not. I wouldn't complain about it. I want the cheapest plan because I'm young, I'm healthy. Medicare for someone age 45, I would take it in a beat, and frankly, so would you, because it's an excellent plan. If you don't believe it, ask anyone who's on Medicare.
Congressman Weiner, a trigger in some fashion that reserves the option of a public option but doesn't start it immediately. Do you support it or not?
Well, the bill that we're contemplating in Congress doesn't start anything until 2013 as it is. And then once the bill starts, there's a 5-year grace period. So we already have effectively a 10-year trigger in the existing bill. Look, if we're just going to kick the can, we're going to kick it to a point where we're no longer accomplishing anything. Saving money, reducing costs to consumers, reducing costs to the taxpayers is what this is about. The reason insurance companies don't want us to pass this is because they don't want to bring down prices. Just asking and hoping and cajoling and praying isn't going to get us there. And that's essentially what a trigger argues for.
You are ignorant about health insurance.
I know. Name calling is your thing, but I'm going to tell you
you're
this.
The one who's the
I'm going to say this. We have hundreds of policies. It's a simple question. How do you contain costs?
They're all the same in New York State.
The costs are all universally high.
That's right, and it's the
because there's not competition from a public plan. No, here, let me give the answer, Dylan, that she won't give. The fact of the matter is the status quo here benefits health insurance companies.
Bingo.
They take 30% in profits and overhead, and if their rates go up $1,000, they charge us $1,050.
Bingo.
That's how they make money. Only Medicare and the public plan will keep competition down. That's my option. Now, she prefers to go launch into a screed trying to scare people, but the question, this deserves an answer,
what
Betsy.
What kind of a moderator
this
are you?
Deserves an answer. How do you contain costs?
Educate you. I'll tell you what, if you answered my question directly, it's a direct question. No, you didn't. You just you answered my question with a string of accusations. Let's talk about your issue with seniors.
It sure seems stinky. Something doesn't smell right here, the 11th hour. And, listen, Karen Ignani has been a fabulous guest on this program. And I think the health insurance industry has been at least straight talking, even if they have an agenda. But, boy, something doesn't feel right here.
Well, to some degree, if that pig ain't squealing, you're not doing something right. I mean, the insurance industry is partially the reason we're in the situation we're now. We have hundreds of billions of dollars that are going into profits and bonuses, as you mentioned. But it's interesting, in their analysis, they're not 100% wrong. It is true that the Baucus plan doesn't cover enough people. And it is true, the health insurance industry says it straight out on your show a moment ago. They are going to raise the rates. The only thing that prevents them from doing that, and you almost got your last guest to stumble into saying it, is some form of competition. But in a strange way, the health insurance industry now standing up and saying, oh no, they're not doing enough on the Baucus bill, what they really mean is, we thought we were going to get all these new customers, and you're doing these other things to try to hold down costs. It ain't going to work. We're not going to let you do it. Which is why the argument is now more profound than ever, and Chuck mentioned it. We have to have the public option. If we don't have it, if you just leave them to their own devices, the health insurance industry right now is putting us on notice. We're not going to lower costs at all. We're going to keep on raising costs because that's their business model.
If it comes down to a compromise where you have to have a trigger, or you have to have an opt-in, opt-out by state, would you accept that?
I would accept and would be open to the idea of after the program's up and running a couple of years, if a state wants to opt out, if they want to leave 25, 30, 50,000 of their citizens without that choice, I don't believe it's going to happen. So I would accept that kind of an opt-out thing.
But not an opt-in?
A trigger, we already have a trigger in the law now, and that the bill only takes effect realistically for another 7 years, 8 years out, 2013 plus a 5-year phase-in. There's already a trigger. The fact is we're going to be judged on whether there is going to be cost coming down in competition. If we don't have a public option, option, I don't care what kind of fancy bells and whistles we put in this thing, we're not going to achieve that goal. People are then going to look back and say, you know what, this effort was a failure.
Our guest now, Representative Anthony Weiner, Democrat from New York, member of the Health Subcommittee of Energy and Commerce. And we're told you come to the table with some new health care information that your office compiled. What do you have to tell us?
Well, it's more kind of another way of looking at this debate and discussion about the public option, to put it in focus. We went just out of curiosity and looked how many members of Congress get the public option. And I know a lot of people have said, well, under the new bill, how many of you members of Congress would choose the public option? Well, there already is one. It's called Medicare. And we found that 55 Republicans and 151 members of Congress are on Medicare right now. So they're already getting the same type of public option that we'd like people who are without insurance to be able to get. And I guess the purpose of this list was to kind of point out some of the hypocrisy of this debate. You have members of Congress thumping their chest how they're against government health care, against government-controlled health care and socialized medicine. And yet when it's time for them to accept Medicare, they're like, sign me up. And part of what I've argued in arguing for a single-payer system is that, well, we have Medicare for those that are 65. Why not 64? Why not 24? Like, you're about 24, I'm sure.
Sure.
And why not have that type of a system that has lower overhead, lower costs, and you don't have to deal with the 30% in profits and overhead that insurance companies take?
You got to love these Republicans. I mean, you guys have chutzpah. The Republican Party is a wholly owned subsidiary of an insurance industry. That's the fact. They say that, well, this isn't going to be enough, but when we propose an alternative to provide competition, they're against it. They say that, well, we want to strengthen state insurance commissioners and they'll do the job. But when we did that in our national health care bill, they said, we're against it. They said they want to have competition, and when we proposed requiring competition, the Republicans are against it. They are a wholly owned subsidiary of the insurance industry. That's the fact. Make no mistake about it. Every single Republican I have ever met in my entire life is a wholly owned subsidiary of the insurance industry. There are inequities in the present way we distribute insurance, the way we distribute health care. There are winners and there are losers. The winners are the insurance industry. And our efforts to reel in the insurance profits, not just because they shouldn't make profits, they're doing what they're supposed to. But what they're doing is driving up taxes. They're driving our economy into the ground, and we need competition and choice to deal with that. That's what this legislation does, and the motion to recommit undermines it. And I've heard a couple of times today, well, we have an effort for bipartisanship here. No, there is not bipartisanship on this fundamental issue. And that is the people who sit on this side, at the risk of offending anyone, generally support the idea of standing up for the American people in their daily battles against high insurance. And the people, generally speaking, who sit on this side of the chamber, and specifically speaking as well in a lot of cases, simply won't permit that to happen and haven't for a generation. Well, that's going to end now. That is going to end because we are going to have competition, we are going to make sure that there are regulations, and we're going to make sure that the American people aren't gouged. That's what the American people stand for. And time again, people say, well, I don't really mind this bill, I just want to weaken it to the point that it's meaningless. And then I've heard my good friend from Texas say, well, this doesn't do anything, but every single time we've tried to do something like a tiny sliver of competition called the public option, said, no, we can't withstand competition, we can't have that. Enough of the phoniness. We are going to solve this problem because for years our Republican friends have been unable to and unwilling to deal with it.